So recently I came across the concepts of MTS and MTM, and in looking into it, I think it draws some parallels with what my friends and I have been thinking about. So who am I? Hello, my name is Zellmer-Bruhn, and I'm a third year undergraduate student studying software engineering. At some places they call this year junior. Wow, that sounds young. Even though I'm about to do the internship, I'll take it. Today, I'll let you know about what people have started to learn about MTS and MTM, because it relates to what we've been doing both academically and professionally. So what is MTS and MTM? MTS or multi-team systems is our organizations use team-based structures to be more flat, meaning lower levels of management, customer-centric, and more agile, that is, more quick at adapting and responding to changes. Teams can form on top of traditional hierarchical structures. We call these matrix organizational structures. You have the vertical groups of function, but you can also layer horizontal cross-functional teams across, which is usually project-based. Or you can go all the way to fully team-based structures. Some call this teaming with a capital T, where you have no bosses and teams self-form dynamically around ideas or problems that need to be solved. Almost like a startup process where you do internal sales pitches, vision development, and influence processes to get people to work on your idea. With teaming, we tend to see more flexible, self-structured time and workspaces. This video here shows the flexible workspace at Google. This is in contrast to rigid job descriptions and divisions or segments in traditional companies. These team-based organizations also tend to emphasize the idea that people should have T-shaped skills that complement each other, rather than having these I-shaped skilled specialists or experts and a generalist who is often the manager. With hiring, team-based organizations need to value interpersonal skills as much as technical skills because there is so much self-direction. In relationships and social capital is so much more important. These team-based organizations also tend to value innovation and experimentation, failing and failing fast. It's a culture that makes people comfortable not knowing, not being right, asking for help, reporting mistakes, and failing. If you are a software engineer, you should probably see that the ideas seem to encompass what agile is and more. Teams, self-directed, fail fast, customer-centric, communication, and flexibility. These ideas all make up what we know as agile. Now, some researchers noticed that although we like to talk as if members are permanently assigned to a single team, this was how a lot of research in the past was done. In reality, it isn't that simple. In practice, most people work in more than one team, or work in one functional area and are assigned to different teams, as is in the case of the matrix organization. The situation in which the members of a team or project are concurrently staffed on one or more other teams or projects is called multiple team membership or MTM. This research area has only been around for 10 or so years, so it is relatively new compared to MTS. Researchers found that MTM is highly common in highly competitive settings characterized by pressure for both productivity and learning, such as software development. Now, they didn't study software development specifically except for one ongoing research, but they did look at a lot of fields. Before we continue, let's talk about the oversight that researchers had for a bit. It's not that the researchers didn't know MTM existed, but they didn't think it was that big of a deal. Except that it was. According to the research of Mark Mortensen, who is a leading scholar looking at organizations with team-based structures, 81 to 95% of managers work in multiple teams. Saying that's not a low number would be an understatement. But the oversight isn't just within the research community, it's everywhere. If you look at all the agile methodologies and implementations, such as Scrum, IUP, or Extreme Programming, you'll see that they work based on the assumption that everyone is able to give their 100% onto the project, which is not the case most of the time. For example, Scrum has a practice called Daily Scrum, where team members would hold synchronous, time-boxed, stand-up daily meetings in which members talk about three things: what they have done, what they're doing, and what obstacles they are facing, which the person called the Scrum Master will go take care of. Can you see where the problem would be? Suppose people were to be working on multiple projects, or the meetings will be, I didn't do anything related to this project yesterday. I'll be working on another project today. I'll try to work on our project tomorrow. I didn't have enough time to do all these different projects in one day. Or at least that's what happened to me and my friends trying to implement Agile in our second year when we studied it. We have to turn the daily Scrum into the every other day Scrum into a twice every week Scrum. I'm sure you all have similar experience. We all try to apply Agile to every project we did, but you always run into the problem of it not considering how students have so many so many simultaneous projects with varying checkpoints and deadlines. I hope this wouldn't be a problem when we get to working real jobs, but it seems research says otherwise. This is not to mention the so-called gig economy, side hustle, side projects, or being a freelancer who takes more than one project at a time. So yes, the oversight is limited to researchers, and we should come up with an agile implementation that takes MTM into account so that we can teach what's actually usable to students and also apply it in our jobs. Now, if I didn't have time to fill, this might be a good place to end. But since that's not the case, let us continue. We've seen that MTS and MTM is related to not just the software industry or any industry, but also to any project-based systems, such as inside classrooms. So let's take a look at its pros and cons and any tips to doing it well so that you can use it either directly at work or apply it in classrooms. Wink wink, teachers take notes. Research has shown that MTS benefited organizations and teams a lot. They are adaptable and flexible so they can deal with changes and mishaps more effectively. There's this idea of dynamically load balancing human resources to where there's high demand, you see. Organizations can also be more efficient in utilization of resources, including human resources. People that are hired for peak periods, for example accountants during months before tax returns, can also be utilized in other times, so there is less time of underutilization or less slack overall. Redundant work, which is one characteristic of organizing structure based on geography, is also reduced due to the interconnectedness of teams that bring awareness of work done. But the most important of all is knowledge transfer. With teaming, people with their social capital form these relationships that act as conduits of knowledge, which moves news, idea, and innovative approaches across the organization, and does so a lot more quickly than traditional structures. This is actually one of the main drivers that make organizations move towards teaming. Lastly, there is also the hope that people will be more motivated and inspired from their increased autonomy and also increased worker retention, which actually, from studies, is the case for people that can handle challenges that come from MTM. Actually, all the benefits I talked about are kind of conditional, that is, they only appear if you implement it right. This also relates to the individuals, so we'll cover that first. For individuals, individuals take notes. MTS, or more specifically, MTM, which is a major consequence of it, is more of a double-edged sword than for teams or corporations. On the plus side, individuals also benefit from knowledge transfer. They can learn things from people and problems they encounter in each team that push them toward their career goals. Encountering people also enhances their social capital, their network, and increases both their career potential and their ability to survive MTM. A study discovered that workers with long tenures, which the researchers postulated it means they have time to develop social capital, actually do better in MTM environments, as opposed to newer workers, who are more likely to feel role ambiguity and stress. They reckon that with social capital, that is, knowing who to go to, when, and for what, would allow them to negotiate the responsibilities with the many bosses that they have. Before we go too far, for knowledge transfer, teachers note, if you do separate people into teams, but don't follow teaming with a capital T, that is, you make teams that aren't dynamic, or teams that are still just rigid structures, maybe because people aren't really allowed to choose. Or if the individuals in the teams aren't ambitious or adventurous and only stays with the same group of people, there isn't going to be much knowledge transfer as well as social capital gained. So depending on if the individuals, whether it be students or workers, know the importance of choosing teams to commit to and people they meet, is going to affect their choice and the benefits they and their organization are going to get. Of course, to get to choose they must have autonomy, which increases motivation, which is really important. Now the autonomy that creates motivation is not just the choice of people, but also the choice of projects. So, to take advantage of this in classrooms, students shouldn't only have choice in forming groups, but also choices in different interesting projects, right? So maybe let students choose their own topic, have a presentation because that's how they show their results, and make sure everyone learns something new and different so that they are interested in others. And another point is that there must be the culture of learning, sharing, and failing fast that I mentioned. Else, there wouldn't be new knowledge or transfer in the first place. Applying this to classrooms, how you promote that may have to do with how you reward students' effort or score them, no? Now, on the negative side, there are serious demands placed on individuals in MTM environments. They have to negotiate with all the bosses that they have. Maybe the bosses don't recognize their demands and obligations that are placed on them by other teams. As mentioned earlier, social capital can help with this. There's also switching costs involved. Research suggests that the greater the variety or the difference in the project, the greater the cost. Also, there's strong evidence for stress and burnout from research by Mark Watkinson. A person described it as being slapped around by team leaders. And speaking from personal experience, yes, I do feel overwhelmed with so many projects this last semester. There's also the things might be bad I mentioned regarding motivation, multiple bosses with conflicting demands. They don't talk to each other. As well as limited social capital and a culture does not promote a culture that does not promote failures. Now, speaking of leaders and teams, what does MTM mean to them? A new problem with getting attention of people to focus on your project. A leader would need extreme influence skills for that. They would also need to engage in intergroup conflict resolution. And yes, they do need to talk to other team leaders. And teachers take strong notes. Since the team all share members, it forms a kind of human resource interdependence. What this means is that something happening in another team or project could be influencing what's happening in yours, whether it be strained in the members' time, attention, or availability. While this has a positive effect in sharing knowledge, team leaders must be able to negotiate with other team leaders to resolve the need for human resources. This is especially important in parallel crunch times, where everyone needs the resource. For example, before a product launch, or in case of classrooms, the finals exam week. This is a recipe for overworked team, and overworked team do not perform well. Another thing leaders have to pay attention is the reduced cohesion. This time students need to take notes. In MTM situation, people tend to focus on tasks and efficiency. They also don't have the time a stable team has to develop trust, so leaders must pay special attention to this and try to actively and rapidly develop trust and familiarity. Share life and non-work activities as well. Trust and familiarity is important to communication, negotiation, and effective conflict resolution. Some teams that are underbounded or informal, where people don't feel much belonging and loyalty, would mean that the team members wouldn't be giving much attention to work. Research shows that people give around 50% attention to one core team they believe they are a part of, and give around 20% to other secondary teams. As leader, you shouldn't want your team to amount to less than 20% of the attention of your members, because this will affect the performance of your team. Okay, now that I've already given some tips to leaders in the process of describing the pros and cons, let's look at tips for you as an individual working or learning in an MTM situation as well. 1. You must be concrete about what your goals are. Think about how each of your teams you are sitting on will enhance your knowledge base and your social capital, that is, your network and your ability to influence people. A trade-off related to this would be that it's easier to work on projects that have a lot of overlapping membership, but that wouldn't expose you to others much. But also, new people also mean new conflicts, and so you should challenge yourself appropriately. Second is you must set and communicate expectations so that you are never in a situation where you spread yourself too thin and can't give what is required in the project, damaging your reputation. To confess, just this semester is when I felt like I spread myself too thin and wasn't able to fully commit to the role I was assigned. I did try to get out of this situation, but I was unsuccessful, so there's that as well. That's why I said in a situation and not promising, because many times it wouldn't be you promising something, but you're getting stuck in a situation that's hard to get out of. Third is you should be able to document your contribution and communicate or sell your progress, so that others know what you can do and invite you to their projects. These kind of political influence skills are very important in an MTM situation. And that's almost all I have regarding the concepts MTM and MTS I just discovered. Conclusion. I think we should do more research regarding MTM, specifically for software development. Yes, there is research encompassing us, but it isn't specific to our domain. I believe we should try to incorporate the studies of MTS and MTM into the agile framework we have. Also, now that the project-based learning has been on the rise, we should apply MTM models for thinking about them as well. For teachers, you might already be thinking about how to best teach your students, but no matter how much you introspect, if your view of the picture is incomplete, you can never explain everything. Your conclusions may also be wrong as well. With these new vocabularies, a philosophy professor once said to me, once you have a name for something, you have power over it and can talk about it. So with these new vocabularies, or keywords, to the teachers listening, I hope you think or rethink project assignments with students, perhaps together, as MTM leaders will do. Thank you.